Welcome back to Meteorology Lab. We've got storms clearing out of Texas. We're getting rid of most of the convective elements. They're pushing on into Louisiana. However, some of it's holding tough around the Houston area this evening. Welcome to Meteorology Lab. This is Tim Vasquez with you, and let's head to those charts. This is the Jackson, Mississippi radar, and we can see we've got a tornado warning in effect up around Winona there, and we've got a very long MCS stretching southward, and there's elements extending all the way down into southwest Louisiana. So taking a look at these thunderstorms, assuming this is kind of like the first time we're getting a glimpse at them, what we'll do is first, let's get rid of some of the clutter here. And what we can see here is that there's not much of a cellular structure to these elements. There's one area right here where there's kind of a convex appearance. This could be a potential somewhat isolated cell right there. And you can see that kind of bowing like that. So that's possible bow echo there. One problem that we have is that the radar is way down here at the bottom, and we're viewing it to the side. And the radar can only determine velocities either inbound or outbound. You can see here that the projected outflow would be perpendicular to the radar. So we have a bit of a problem here looking at the velocity field, and it might help to actually switch to some neighboring radars, perhaps Columbus here, but let's see how things look in any case. Base velocity looks like this, comprised mostly of outbound. Not surprising because the storm is moving kind of in this direction, kind of away from the radar. We do see that ground relative velocities are on the order of about 40 knots. Let me shrink this window down just a little bit. And what we'll try to do is we'll try to subtract out the storm motion. So here's storm relative velocity, and yeah, it does appear there is a hint of something going on right there. So what might this be? Well, this consists of outbound, very high velocities right there. And here we've got kind of a hint of inbound. So you see what that's suggesting here. That's implying that there is divergence from that axis right there. So possible downburst. And the other element, since it's kind of, the axis of this couplet is kind of off-center, kind of diagonal, there's another component of motion going on here. Let's take an axis like this. Most of the outbound is on that side, and most of the inbound is on this side. So what this is suggesting is perhaps a bit of rotation in here. So that's kind of odd. It's kind of got the pattern there of cyclonic divergence. That could just be kind of a temporary thing going on there. The overwhelming signature there is going to be divergence. So we would look at that possibly being an outflow area. Also, we got to consider this is about 5,000 feet up in the storm, so what might be happening at the ground might be something entirely different. Now we can look at the storm at the spectrum width just to see if we can pick anything out, and this is pretty high up, so we're not seeing very much at all. Echo tops, this is where something really stands out here. Looks like we're picking up 43,000 tops right in that spot right there. And there's the indication of maybe some pulsing. See there, kind of perhaps a multicellular structure. So that might be something to look at on the satellite imagery right there. So that's definitely the dominant storm right there. And then looks like a secondary top just north of Jackson. So at the surface, the cells, they do kind of look alike, but once you start picking through some of the other products, that gives you a very good idea of what you want to focus on. So then you can come back to the reflectivity and then kind of really take a close look at things. So there could be a cell coming together right here. So you see that hint of a supercell structure right there. That could be something to watch there. Let's look at the velocities. There's the base velocity. And already I can see something going on right there. It just changed. And earlier, let me go back to what I had 30 seconds ago. So you see that coming together right there. And then it kind of moves to the northeast right there. And let's subtract out the storm motion. Well, not much help here because we're viewing it perpendicular. But another attribute that I want to look at here is the movement. So sometimes I'll kind of page backwards and try to establish a baseline of possible motion. So you see I'm looking at that axis right there, and that gives me an idea of what the projected motion might be. And one very powerful tool in GR Level 2 and GR Level 3 also is when you set these little dots here, you can see down here at the bottom there's this readout of the azimuth and distance that your cursor is from that dot. So you see here it's 360, I'm north of it. Here it's 45 degrees, I'm northeast, and here it's 90, I'm east of that dot. So I can use that to kind of get an idea of the motion. And it looks like it's about 67 degrees relative to true north. So I can set that on the current position and then project that out forward. And I can see that this area here is possibly under the gun. So I'd be looking at north of Canton, for example. Maybe a little bit of a threat in that area. And the VIL products are useful. I actually find that radar scope, if you all have apps, they've got a very powerful version of VIL. It's a little bit more sensitive. That's a good thing to use, especially if you're having trouble picking out what's going on up and down the line. But the one in GR Level 2 also does work somewhat. So that's another potential cell coming together, and we'll check back on that in a little bit. So we'll start zooming out a little bit, and we've got a couple of tornado watches for Mississippi, central Louisiana, and around the Houston area. And then further south we've got a severe thunderstorm warning, severe thunderstorm watch in South Texas there. There's SPC's view right there, showing the two tornado watches out ahead of this MCS. And we'll check out the meso-analysis graphics. We'll get an idea of the instability and shear ahead of this MCS. So there's our storms right there. We can see the low-level wind field coming out of the south-southeast. And let's check out the Cape. Good one to start out with would be the most unstable. And we're only seeing about 500 to maybe 750 joules per kilogram in Mississippi, a little bit higher down around the Beaumont and Houston area. And then shear, we can take a look at maybe the surface 1 kilometer. The values are actually centered mostly in Louisiana there. So the further south you go, possibly the better the shear in that area. And one last thing I'll look at, I'll take a look at that velocity tensor magnitude. Check for any boundaries that might be ahead of the MCS. And don't really see any. I see a gradient right there, but it's pointing the other way. This is warm, and that's cold. So that's... If you wanted to put a boundary, you'd have to put that on the warm side, so that would be in this area right there. So that could be something I might keep an eye on for later this evening. All right, let's pick up the rest of the products and keep things moving. We'll take a look at the thermal structure of the atmosphere. And that cold air is on the way south, driven by this 1040 millibar high in the Northwest Territories right there. And the leading edge of that cold air mass appears to be around the Lake Superior, Iowa, Nebraska area, somewhat like that. The core of the cold air, northern Manitoba, northern Saskatchewan, and then we can take a look at the southern system. And there it is in the Gulf Coast area. There's the front, and perhaps some sort of warm front, maybe somewhere in this area. Could be all the way up to Huntsville. Not sure yet. So that's the synoptic scale picture there. And let me take a look at chat real quick and make sure the stream is looking good. There you go. This is a pretty neat image here. This is the infrared satellite imagery there. And the black is going to be the colder tops. This is kind of like the overshoots right there. And looks like one really good overshooting top around the Jasper, Texas area. Okay, let's see how things look in the chat there. Erica Baker reporting mid-50s there, calm winds. We've got Electric Dog here and Fun with Tech, Burl H, Ryan Toomeys, Megan John. Mike Estrick reporting 32 in Denver with snow showers. Adam Davis reporting dreary weather there in Clarion. Cooler in South Florida, mid-60s there from Ryan. And David Holcomb is here in Super Desert 5. Welcome to the webcast. We've got Shirley Keast. Doppler radar analysis, my true love, from David Holcomb. Ron Chalfant in Southern California reporting 63, clear and sunny. And just scrolling quickly through the rest of the messages, we got Mike R here. San Francisco back to springtime temperatures there. Megan John noting the tornado warning. MN Medic Joe, welcome to the webcast. Checking it out there from St. Paul, Minnesota. Just across the river there from Minneapolis. And I'm fighting with the chat window here. Yeah, the interface on YouTube is kind of poorly implemented, so I'm constantly in the background trying to work with the windows here and keep things caught up. Mike R saying precip totals 5 1/4 inch in the San Francisco area. Everybody reporting things are looking good. Thomas Copeland loves listening to the weathercast, and very good. So one thing that's very cool looking at this is looks like some gravity waves. See that ripple structure extending from that convection around Lake Sabine all the way down into southern Arkansas there. So some neat structure there. Cells pulsing out there in deep southeast Texas. And we'll check it out on the water vapor imagery there. The subtropical plume continuing to move eastward, now heading into the southeast U.S. there, and we can see the intense jet stream energy now crossing Texas into Missouri and Illinois, and that's continuing to shift eastward this evening. Behind it, there's the deep cold air over the Rocky Mountain region. We can see the cyclonic turning of the cloud field out in that region. So this is some unstable air, and yesterday we were discussing how that would probably emerge into Texas tomorrow. And I'm going to be looking for that on the model charts, a chance of cold core convection. Okay, I think we'll take a quick look at the mesoscale here. So this will cover a little bit of the southeast there in Texas and Louisiana there. You can see a lot of outflow on this model chart here. This is going to be about 4 p.m. and it looks like the leading edge is running something like this from around Huntsville to Monroe to north of Houston and then down to San Antonio. So back behind it, looks like a meso high following in. That's the large cold pool coming in behind the system, probably reinforced a bit by some Canadian cold air. So overnight, let's see what happens. Looks like that outflow becomes kind of stationary, and then we see a little bit of cyclogenesis in southwestern Louisiana there. So it looks like we're developing a structure kind of like that right there. So we're probably picking up a little bit of a shortwave, perhaps working its way up the boundary like that, linking up with the surface patterns. This is going to be about 5 in the morning. And looks like that system pushes offshore. Some really good winds associated with that. Sustained 30 knots offshore there. And that moves out into the Gulf. And then we warm up tomorrow, and it looks like the hot spot is going to be Alabama there, all the way down to Gulfport. Some cool air coming in behind. Looks like some baroclinicity back there around Dallas and Waco. And that's probably going to be near that cutoff low there, or that upper level low. Cold air spills in, and then we warm up to 60s for Friday. Big high cover in the southeast, and then we can see that we're developing a lee side trough already going into the weekend. So let's see what is going to happen overnight. We'll take a look at the high resolution rapid refresh. There's our storm activity there in Mississippi and Louisiana. So it looks like that'll persist overnight, and some of it will regenerate further up the line in southwestern Louisiana there, with that upper level support coming in. And yeah, we can take a quick look at the air mass out ahead of it. 3 in the morning, Louisiana around Baton Rouge. Let's check that out. We'll see how the hodograph and SCU-T look. Looks pretty saturated there in the lowest 6,000 or 7,000 feet. Some moist adiabatic lapse rates, modest instability there above. And then we'll check out the hodograph. Looks like some pretty good 0 through 1 kilometer shear there, so the tornado threat may not be over tonight. So we'll probably have to keep close tabs there on Louisiana as that MCS approaches. So we're talking about the shear between those two levels, 0 and 1 kilometer. So quite a difference. At the surface, we're looking at southeast winds, or south-southeast at about 10, and then up at 1 kilometer, which is about 925, south-southwest at 35. So a little bit of a low-level jet, and we can see that right there on the vertical scale there. 35 to 40 knot winds right there. So the hodograph a little bit stretched out. We've got some 50 to 60 knot bulk shear. We've certainly got the ingredients there for a little bit of severe in Louisiana tonight. So for the rest of the evening, I would expect after dawn probably things to subside a little bit, since it usually does that. Yeah, there it goes right there. We lose the convection. There goes the outflow racing out ahead. So things will probably quiet down for about 6 to 12 hours, and then I would expect things to redevelop there in Alabama, maybe tomorrow afternoon. And we can take a quick look at the supercell composite. This is a good product for kind of pinning down areally where severe weather risk might be. And on pivotal weather, that's under the severe weather tab under supercell composite. So let's see what happens. We can see the boundary pushing southward. And it looks like most of the severe weather potential is going to be just along and west of the Mississippi River, kind of right there in central Louisiana. That's going to be the best potential for any surprise severe weather. Looks fairly decent up in Mississippi after 9 or 10, so things should be improving in that area later on. So let's go ahead and go into the forecast, and then we'll just take one last look at the radar there. So the forecast for the next couple of weeks, we picked things up tomorrow afternoon with new convection in Alabama there along that boundary. Cold air coming back in behind, and looks like a reinforcing shot coming in from Canada there. Looks kind of quiet out there in the western U.S. And there goes our overnight convection in Georgia and Alabama, moving into South Carolina later. And behind it, cold air advection coming south. And here's our new system coming together in the northern high plains. So that'll be our next focus of attention there. A potent late March system developing in the Dakotas there and moving towards the Twin Cities. So it looks to be kind of snowy going into Friday and Saturday and up there in Minnesota there. The system will move into Lake Michigan and Lake Huron and then into Ontario. And the trailing cold front will be racing southward. And let's see how far it makes it. Looks like it gets probably down at the Gulf Coast area. I don't know, I think it looks like it actually gets hung up kind of in this area here. So I guess we're redeveloping some flow coming up off the Gulf towards the high plains. So that's the atmosphere responding to pressure falls in that area right there. So the warm air advection already starts up. And then another push of cold air comes southward. The Gulf is open, so there's storms along that for midweek next week. And this cold air mass makes it further south, going into the 4th and 5th there. Then things look kind of stormy out west around the 6th and 7th. Looks like more polar air getting involved. So winter is definitely not over. Here comes another winter weather system developing there in the northern plains. Strong southwesterly flow in Texas and Oklahoma, and looks like a cold front coming in from the west there in Arizona. So things stormy going into the 7th and 8th. And then that moves through Texas around the 10th. And then into the southeast U.S. around the 12th there. Okay, so that is going to be your Wednesday update. Let's just take one last look at the radar, see how things are going. Looks like our cell here, it is forming a little bit of a bow echo there, but doesn't look like it's intensified too much. And the magnitudes on the storm relative velocity, they're a little bit high, but I don't see a point, like a very tight couplet. I don't see anything that looks like storm rotation. Maybe a little bit right there, but this is not too bad. And then looking down the line real quick, I may need to adjust that storm vector. Let me see if I can get that looking a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. We could take a look down the line, and yeah, things are looking a little bit better than they did about 20 minutes ago. Yeah, it looks like they've got a tornado warning out for that cell right there from earlier. So that's still in effect, and they've got a couple tornado warnings up there around Venona and Walthall, Mississippi. So yeah, we're looking at Mississippi, just north of Jackson. And I don't see anything that looks like imminent trouble at this time, but of course, we'll have to keep an eye on that right there. All right, one last look at chat here. Mike R. worked at Monterey Naval Postgrad School. Of course, Monterey is where we had the old no gaps model. Navy has got some pioneering model development that they do out there, and it is bound very tightly with oceanographic models too. Ron Chalfant grew up in the Santa Barbara area. Air Force 2, yep, like myself. And Minnesota Medic Joe says they hit 52 in the Twin Cities today. Snow expected this weekend. Okay, well, that's about all I got for tonight. I appreciate you all joining. And just to let you know, I may end up taking a break tomorrow, since tomorrow is Thursday. It tends to be a little bit of a slow day, so we'll just kind of wait and see. And I'll try to update the live stream page once I have more info. Anyway, hope you all have a good evening, and take care, and we'll see you in the next day or two.